Well, there's a couple of things that come to mind. The first one I wanted to mention, you mentioned the agrarian revolution. A couple of people agree that it's you said the worst thing that happened to humanity. Well, it also arguably, civilization comes from it. So it wasn't like all bad, right? Right. No, but you're saying in terms of the body.
Well,
right?
in terms of the body, and
right.
I certainly, when I heard that, I thought, well, this can't be true. Civilization, it allowed people to have philosopher classes, working classes, different classes of people with spare time when food was saved. But interestingly, there's now evidence that there were some relatively advanced civilizations much earlier than we thought,
Absolutely.
like Göbekli Tepe in
100%.
Turkey, and similar another site near
Egypt,
that
yeah.
in Egypt as well.
Yeah.
So before the agricultural revolution, it may not be that we were all walking around in caves, hunter-gatherers, but you're right, it is a balance. There were benefits of agriculture.
Right. Well, and the thing is that it doesn't have to be one. It doesn't have to be one or the other either. In a way, we've been conditioned to believe that a pill or some kind of medical intervention is what's going to solve our problem. Like we've kind of given away our responsibility for our health to the doctors, and that is also translated into the use of all sorts of medications, many of which also interact with each other in negative ways. And people, I've heard incredibly bizarre statistics about how many medications some people take. And you just think to yourself, my God, they all have side effects. Yep. Right? And the more you take, the more likely one of those things will come up, and some of them are hidden, some of them will come later. We're just like a highly medicalized society.
It's a great point. I think part of it too, as we talked about, if I go to a doctor, I'd much rather have a pill than get a lecture about I need to exercise more and change my diet, because I used to believe that lifestyle didn't really matter, and what really worked was a pill. And furthermore, I used to believe, and many people still believe, that taking the pill will actually not just treat the symptoms of their disease, but will actually control the disease and make them healthier. And that's really not true in many, if not most cases. For example, in diabetes, type 2 diabetes, giving the patient insulin and metformin to control the blood sugar spikes doesn't really control the long-term effects of the disease. You still continue to progress on your diabetes. You get your foot amputated, you get your renal failure, you get your blindness, you get your heart attack, you get your Alzheimer's. So I think people aren't aware that in many cases these pills don't really solve the problem, they just treat the symptoms. And the interesting thing is there's no pill for metabolic disease. There's no pill that you can take that will reverse these things. Metabolic disease is driven by lifestyle, and lifestyle is really the secret to it.
Well, and the corollary, as we've kind of been touching on, right, is that you have to be responsible. No one's going to do it for you, right? Like whether it's Congress versus agencies. I mean, these bureaucracies develop in ways to kind of avoid a locus of responsibility at any cost, right? I mean, and just it's like almost like a theme in our society where I want some kind of external factor to fix things.
Exactly. I love this about your show, questioning the narratives, asking the big questions about science and other things in our society. And to your point, we need to take responsibility. A lot of medicine over the last, the 20th century, it developed a very paternalistic attitude. You let the doctor take care of everything. They're going to take care of anything, and you turn over all responsibility to the doctor. And the problem with that is, as we've seen, the doctor doesn't control your lifestyle. I control my lifestyle. We all control our lifestyle. So we need to learn that we're in charge of our health, not the doctor.
If I recall correctly, like half of what professors in medical school teach their students is wrong, at least, right? I think that's your search. That's very disturbing news.
one of the greatest physicians of all time, Sir William Osler, famously made one of the greatest comments about medical education when he addressed a group of medical students on the day of their graduation to becoming physicians. He said, "Gentlemen," and at the time most medical students were male, if not gentlemen at least. He said, "Gentlemen, I have a confession to make. Half of what we've just taught you is wrong. The problem is we don't know which half." People who understand medical education or even science itself will know this is a process of science. It's all about questioning the existing narrative and throwing out the stuff that's incorrect and learning the new stuff. But Sir William Osler pointed it out beautifully, and that's the theme for my book, with the the clickbait title, "Lies I Taught in Medical School." But it goes through the half of things that I taught were wrong, and hopefully can help people avoid the mistakes that I made, and nearly cost me my health and my life.
Tell me a little bit about how you are trying to change things.
Well, after I was able to reverse my own health conditions, I wanted to get the message out to people. And I'd written many textbooks as part of my academic career.
And just to be clear, the message is lifestyle will transform your health, something like this.
That's right, that we are in charge of our health, and that the chronic diseases that are going to kill us, the medicines that were prescribed for them really don't treat the underlying disease. And if you want to get the root cause, you need to change your lifestyle and change your metabolism and your metabolic health. That was the message. And I began to look at new ways I could get the message out. I'd never been on Twitter. I wasn't a big Facebook person, so I embraced social media. I began using Twitter. I just passed 100,000 followers on Twitter and have 250,000 total in social media so far. And I began reaching out to them. We were publishing this book. A couple weeks ago, I was in Costa Rica filming a TV series on longevity and health and wellness and metabolism that just got picked up by PBS and the Discovery Channel that'll be airing in about 6 months to a year. I realized that it's not enough just to educate people and get the message out. We need to change things in the healthcare systems. The next step in my journey, I got together with some friends, some other physicians in Los Angeles, and we've purchased and put together a managed care organization in Southern California. It's over 100,000 patients, 200 physicians, 200 primary care physicians, 600 specialists, and these.
So just to be clear, this is an existing provider, basically. Right. Okay, wow.
We're acquiring it, and it's important to note that these patients are underserved. In other words, they're Medicare, Medicaid, which means they're socioeconomically disadvantaged, which means generally poor health, generally poor access to health care. And it's our mission to change that. So we're going to bring latest cutting edge technology, some of the things in my book, some of the things we've talked about, these ideas of lifestyle to these people. And the advantage of having a managed care organization like this, instead of an insurance company where you make money by denying claims, with managed care, we make money by making the patients healthier, and we can spend the resources of the organization on anything that works. It can be red light therapy, it could be massage, it can be meditation, it can be movie theater tickets, whatever incentivizes the patients to actually be healthier. And that's what we're doing. And on top of it, we've built an innovation lab where young companies can come up and we incubate their technology, their healthcare technology. We try it on some of the patients who want to try it out, and if it works, we amplify it across the network and help them get started. We're setting up a venture studio fund so that these companies can be funded. And then beyond that, we realize that it's great to do that. It's great to show healthcare change. That's a big step, but we wanted to go one last step, and that was in the education process. And The next thing we've done is set up a new graduate medical education program in Southern California at a hospital there, where we've set up new training programs in family medicine, in psychiatry, in transitional medicine. We're just starting a radiology program that'll hopefully start this summer to look and teach some of these newer ideas of medicine. And we're even considering and talking to some people about possibly starting a new undergraduate program, which would be a new medical school as well.
Right. I mean, that's absolutely fascinating. I mean, there's so much that, like, this is what I keep coming up against, right? There's so much that's not working right.
Yeah, the knowledge is out there, and it's just a matter of getting it into the people's hands. But also, I mean, I used to think that I just need to tell my friend who's a diabetic not to put sugar in his coffee and he'll be fine. He's an intelligent person. I explained about glucose and he gets it, he knows, but what happens the next time I see him having coffee, he's putting sugar in it. It's sort of the addiction thing. So it's not enough just to tell people sometimes. They maybe need to be enrolled in a coaching program with an addiction thing. We're starting to use low-dose naltrexone, which is an addiction medicine that works for other types of substance abuse. We're applying it for patients with junk food addictions, with carbohydrate addictions, in diabetics and all.
I can't help but think of Ozempic. Is that how you you see the name of it? This is kind of a bit big in the media these days. Apparently, a lot of people take it. Apparently, there's problems. Right. So how do you understand that drug?
It's a great drug. I mean, it's a great drug in that it helps people with weight loss. But the problem is you have to be on the drug long term. And when people get off the drug, they frequently rebound. And also the drug is fairly expensive. So it's a matter of basically taking a pill when lifestyle would do it. Now, for some of these people, they're not able to get in a program where the lifestyle makes a difference. But the interesting thing about things like ketosis that people say, how do you have the willpower to only have one meal a day? And the answer is, I don't. I'm a junk food addict. But the interesting thing is, once we get into ketosis, this metabolic state, the appetite goes away. So I'm not hungry, and it's easy. And you can ask yourself, can you eat just one potato chip? Of course not. You have to eat the whole bag. Potato chips are junk food. They're full of carbohydrates. They drive insulin. They drive our hunger. Can you eat just one hard-boiled egg? Or one slice of cheese? Well, of course you can, because it doesn't contain the macronutrients that drive insulin and drive our appetite. And by eating healthy foods and avoiding the junk foods, our appetite naturally goes away or is maintained in control for many, many people. Not all people. Some people, need surgery and need these Ozempic and these other drugs, but it's possible to do it without it if the right programs are in place, I believe.
Well, right, and we also, there's, again, with any of these drugs, this is always my concern. With any of these drugs, there's always some kind of side effects for some portion of the population, whereas what you're talking about is using the body's own systems, right, to deal with the issue, which to me seems like it's always going to be a better idea if it's indeed possible.
Even the longevity drugs, the rapamycin, which turns down mTOR, or metformin as longevity drugs. People say, well, why don't I just take rapamycin, increase my longevity, improve my metabolic health? Well, the reason is, fine, you can take rapamycin. I mean, I take rapamycin, but I also do it with lifestyle, because there are things that can benefit from lifestyle that rapamycin probably doesn't provide. We don't understand the systems well enough to know, how any of these drugs really work. But lifestyle is a proven thing that's been developed over, tens of thousands of years.
We as human beings are prone to accepting orthodoxies, and once we accept them, it's hard to change our minds. But, for example, this inverted food pyramid, that's, fascinating, right? Incredibly disturbing when you think about it, when you think about the impacts over generations that this has now had, that, in a way, it's a kind of, been a kind of indoctrination in the wrong direction. I've talked to, I've talked to people about this, and they're like, how could that be? Right? I won't accept that. They won't say this, but they're basically thinking it. I'm not accepting that.
Well,
right?
I'm saying it's the opposite, but many intelligent people disagree with me. And in fact, the recommendations of the Nutrition Council, basically that designs the food pyramid and every few years issues an updated version, continues with the narrative that, cereals and grains and carbohydrates should be a significant portion of our diet with a smaller amount of protein, and then avoiding saturated fats. And one reason is the council that comes up with these recommendations. There was a fascinating paper that came out. There are a number of conflicts from the council from the major food manufacturers, who basically benefit from manufacturing junk foods. They sell junk foods that the Food Council then recommends in the food pyramid. And one problem is there's not a lobbying force for lifestyle. There's no, lifestyle is free. If I fast during the day, I actually save money because I don't spend it on breakfast or lunch, and I have more time. But there's no lobbying group for that. So we're up against a number of pernicious financial influences that drive the system. Even in the face of knowledge to the contrary, people are still getting the information. Our school lunch programs are still driven by this food pyramid and these food recommendations. The narrative today is such that if anyone handed a 12-year-old child a lit cigarette, everyone would be aghast, and it just wouldn't happen. But someone can hand a 12-year-old child a bowl of sugar cereal and pour chocolate milk on it, and nobody thinks anything of it, when actually it's very damaging to the child even at that age, and it drives now the incidence of type 2 diabetes in children, which we didn't used to see at all. So changing the narrative is possible, I think, and getting it to the point where, I used to think drinking orange juice was healthy. Most people think orange juice is healthy. You see it on television and movies as, a healthy breakfast. But in my opinion, it's not. It's basically sugar, and it's like eating a candy bar. But changing that narrative so that people think that they instinctively realize what is healthy and what will benefit their lifestyle can have a dramatic effect. It's a big challenge to be able to do that.
Yeah, it feels like the challenge of our time, really, right?
It does, because the chronic diseases that we've been talking about today, the growth in these diseases are unprecedented in our history, and they're frankly not sustainable. Half the adult population is hypertensive. The growth rate in type 2 diabetes is going to approach 50% of the population soon. When that happens, all these chronic diseases are going to explode. And it doesn't have to be that way, because this disease is reversible in most cases, with lifestyle.
And one disease that I've been thinking a lot about, because I've been becoming very interested in brain chemistry, the hippocampus, neurological issues, again, where we hear this is a very common COVID vaccine injury. I think 80% of them are actually neurological. It's Alzheimer's that I'm referring to. I mean, that is absolutely skyrocketed. Right?
Absolutely.
And this was, it's a disease that was kind of almost unheard of, 100 years ago, right?
Exactly. And Alzheimer's represents, if you think about it, it's sort of the ultimate failure of the medical research establishment. Because for literally decades, there's been unlimited money available to come up with a treatment for Alzheimer's. And to this day, there's no significant pharmaceutical treatment for Alzheimer's that will have any significant effect on the progression of the disease. But we're learning now that things like lifestyle, guys like Dale Bredesen and others, have come up with innovative techniques where they look at Alzheimer's not as a disease of beta amyloid, but actually as a disease of many different things. It may be vitamin D deficiency, it may be a parasitic infection, it may be lead or mercury poisoning, many different factors. But one of the factors is glucose metabolism. It's known that you can diagnose Alzheimer's disease with a PET CT scan, which looks at brain glucose. And low metabolism of brain glucose indicates Alzheimer's disease in certain patients. Well, ketosis, as we've talked about, is an alternate fuel source for the brain beyond glucose. And what happens with Alzheimer's patients when they go into ketosis and they're put on a ketogenic diet is the brain is able to use ketones instead of glucose. And for some, not all of the patients, but many of the patients, they're able to have significant improvements in their memory from these ketogenic diets. And Heather Sanderson runs a bunch of clinics. She's a protege of Dale Bredesen, and her Alzheimer's disease clinics they're actually nursing homes for Alzheimer's disease. They're pretty much unique. I've never heard of anyone else doing this, but she has a program where the Alzheimer's disease patients go in, they get treated, and then they go home and they get better. Usually Alzheimer's is a one-way street. You go into a nursing home and you don't come out.
Oh, that's, I mean, absolutely astonishing. And we'll, some of the folks you mentioned today on the show, I would very much like to invite to talk about, and particularly this, because it's just, it's something I've been thinking a lot about with, aging parents and so forth. Listen, this has been so much fun. Final thought as we finish?
Every morning when I get up, I get to choose my lifestyle. I get to make choices about the food I eat, what I put in my mouth, how much I exercise, and it's a choice we get to make every single day to take control of our health and longevity.
Well, Dr. Robert Lufkin, it's such a pleasure to have had you on.
Thank you, Jan. It's been great.
Thank you all for joining Dr. Robert Lufkin and me on this episode of American Thought Leaders. I'm your host, Jan Jekielek.